So thank you all for coming. I'm sorry some of you have to stand, but we all have to suffer for poetry, so that's okay. This is Alan Michael Parker. I'm thrilled to have him here. He's going to read tonight, and he's going to be reading from his most recent book of poetry, Long Division, as well as, I think, some earlier work and some brand new work. Later tonight, 8 o'clock, in room 180 in the Business Leadership Building. So come to that. It's going to be fantastic. I think you'll get a taste of what's to come today when you hear him talk. He's, a funny guy and sometimes says some, reasonably smart things. So this is a book that last year was a finalist for our UNT Rilke Prize. And it's a book that Bruce Bond and I both admire tremendously, and we're thrilled to have Alan here to talk to us about this book. I know some of you have read this book. Those of you in my classes have spent some time with this book. So I know you have things you want to talk to Alan about. So why don't you come up and stand up here and... do you want to sit? Do you want to sit?
No. I'm going to get too hyper. I'm going to pace.
Okay. So. And so ask whatever you want to ask. Does anybody have a question to kick things off?
Yeah, let's play.
Are you ready to dive in? Because I have a question I can start with. But
we could do a reverse midterm. I was just reading about that, where the students ask the professor questions.
Yeah. Okay. Go for that.
I have a question. I want to know if you want to write
Because the back of my head has been featured here, so...
Yes, exactly. No, in fact, it would be best if you would face the wall.
Like this, and then...
Well, okay, so let me ask you a question to start things off, and then people will chime in. So in my couple of classes where we were reading this book, a word that kept coming up in response to the book, and this was always a favorable thing, was the word accessible. I think a lot of people really felt welcomed in by the book. But it seems to me that the word accessibility is kind of fraught in the poetry world. And I think often poets worry that accessibility is in some way opposed to complexity and ambition and a kind of depth of thought. But it seems to me that's exactly not what happens in your work, where those things work together. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about your attraction to accessibility or clarity in poems, and how you see accessibility as something which, in fact, works hand in hand with the deepening of thought.
Happily. That's a good question. You should teach something. So, increasingly in my writing life and my reading life, and accessibility to me is also always a question about reading in many ways. The ideas that I like to play with are harder and harder as I get older. So they are ideas that might be related to mortality or might be related to, I was just talking about, I've been reading a lot about conditions of mercy for something I'm writing. But I want my readers to be able to wrestle with those ideas without having the surface of the text be resistant to the reader. So I want you to get to the ideas. I'm also interested in kinds of misdirection at the level of genre. So you might think you're in a lyric and you're in a narrative. You might think you're in a narrative and you're in a lyric. And the ways in which the genre collide in the work is for me a question of difficulty. That's underneath the surface of language that you might know. And it's not quite the dogs and cats language. I'm not afraid of Latinate words. I'm not afraid of my reading through my own relationship to literary history and having that be part of what I'm writing about. So I'm not dumbing myself down, which is really important. And I think that's the association that Dr. Marx was. Who are you?
Yeah.
You're Dr. Marx?
Are you? I'm that guy in the corner.
That so often accessibility means that you're aiming for emotional sincerity at the expense of any kind of rigor, subtext, that you default to something that you call sincere. It comes out of particular moments in American verse, sort of post-romantic moment that we inherited from Iowa. They inherited it from, my guess is, Wordsworth or Shelley. And that inheritance has been misread in many ways. So the simple poem is a poem that aims for a way to perfect what I feel. And that also is, to me, dumbing down what's possible. I love ideas. I like to write my way through them and in them when I'm writing poems. I think it's a marvelous opportunity. No one reads poetry, although this is a huge crowd. But no one reads poetry, so why not? Write the poems that interest me the most. I used to think that I was writing poems for I had this kind of these are for my mom, right? These are for my mom. She was a reader. She was literate. I had to steal her books of poems when I was growing up. So I thought, she's my reader. She's my reader. Oh, that's kind of stupid. She's not really my reader because she loves everything that I write. So that's not going to work. Now my reader's me. And you're not supposed to say that because it sounds vainglorious. But I got to make me happy writing those poems. And then on the 100th draft, I got to make you happy. But at least by way of what I'm trying to distill linguistically and complicate philosophically, first it's me, and then it's you. That was did you notice that my voice went down slightly to indicate that the next question? Tell me.
Keith.
Hi. Mel.
How are you?
Dandy, nice to meet you.
Do you feel like your change in direction of like who you're writing your poems for has changed your orientation to the ideas as you present them and focus towards them?
Yes. No. So yes first. Yes, insofar as most of the books of poems that I've written have been in conversation with a specific philosopher. I read philosophy for kids. I know. It's like total nerdville. And so each time round, I'm really wrestling with someone, Wittgenstein or Kierkegaard or whomever it might be, book by book. That hasn't changed. So maybe that's the no first. And so, but the yes part of it is that I'm trying to write experientially about these ideas rather than in the abstract. So my feeling is that the deeper I get into my career, into these new poems, the more the philosophical ideas are made manifest in the work, rather than ideas that are underneath there. That's different. That's me trying to have what I believe manifest in my life as a man. That's different. A new goal, maybe it's a couple years old. For me, new because I'm old, is to be the whole man in my poems. So every part of who I am. Nothing compartmentalized. And I feel like sometimes accessibility also makes us compartmentalize ourselves into, I'm a nature poet, and I have this experience, and then I have an epiphany, and then I say a nice little prayer for Dorothy, who's back in the city, and we hope she's doing okay. And, that was a ruin, that was cool, and wait, Dorothy, I hope you're doing okay, and we call that Tintern Abbey. But it's also a very specific kind of poem we know we can write. So, to my mind, that's only part of who I am. I want all of who I am as the working artist in my work. That's really hard, and I'm failing at it, but I'm very happy to fail at it.
Yeah. Another question. How do you treat
real people?
Sure. Didn't know. I'm Matthew.
Hi.
Nice to meet you, Mark. And I was curious, how do you go about treating the image a poem that's sort of correlated with that?
Well, I would say I'm an image slut. So, it grown. I'll go here. Go over here. In that, I don't exercise discretion in the composition stage when it comes to imagery. I'm deeply schooled in the show don't tell, and I believe that the place the reader and the writer meet in a poem is a physical place defined by the image that the poet has provided. That's the consensual ground between reader and writer. For me, it's the image. For other people, it's sound. For other people, it's story. For me, it's the image. So it's central to my aesthetic. But by way of when I'm first on the page and I'm first thinking my way through what a poem in process might be before years of self-loathing and revision, they're sometimes the same thing. Then it's just as many images as I can figure out that might be exploring what I'm doing until I find one or two. As a result, one of the things that's happening in Gesundheit, in new poems, is that I'm writing shorter poems. I have half a dozen poems in a new manuscript that are really short poems. That's quite new for me. And by short, I mean 11 lines, 18 lines. Maybe that's short. I'm so daddy. But the image is, it's at the center. My partner's a visual artist. I've been an art critic. What I see is very much at the center of what I write. And my job is to show you that. Right? Fitzgerald says that the ability to write what's in your head is genius. So I got a long way to go. But that's one of the things I'm trying to do. Write what I see so that you can see it.
Hi, I'm Chelsea.
Hi, I'm Alan. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to Denton, Texas.
No, welcome to you.
No, welcome. Okay.
One thing I noticed that I think might make your poetry welcoming, like Corey pointed out, is the use of humor. And that's something that I enjoyed in many of the poems. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about if that's something that just sort of happens as part of your aesthetic, or if you work consciously toward that. And then what do you think would be some of the risks and difficulties in using humor? Because that's something that I don't see that often, but I think that you use it very well.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I work hard against being funny because for me it's a default move that has been available to me all my life. So I work hard not to let the poem disintegrate into how clever I am. That's really important to me. That comedy that it facilitate pathos. That it allows for the kind of turn that will introduce you to the seriousness of subject. And I distinguish between subject and content, but the seriousness of subject. Not what the poem says it's doing, but what it's actually about would be the subject. So I think real hard and seriously about comedy, and the risk for me is that I am clever. And poetry is actually not a place where my cleverness prospers. I've got wordplay, I've got word joy, I've got puns, I've got, I've got goofiness. These things are things I love. We're talking my Facebook post for being here is Denton, Texas, and UNT, bring out your dead. It's a Monty Python reference. This is my schooling at the feet of the greats. So I have to be for all of the notion that I'm still thinking about being the whole man, cleverness is my bane. Comedy is my ambition. I do think that turning into a stand-up routine is what threatens the poet, especially who's interested in comedy. And I won't mention names, but I got 5. I can think of that. Should I not mention? I should not mention. Oh my gosh! No! I'm in the same state as one of them. I can't.
But we know who you're talking about.
He's a big poet. And a wonderful poet. Later, we drink. Yes.
I was wondering.
Your name.
Nice. I'm Colin. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
How once you have the images that you want to work with, how do you go about organizing that, or maybe organizing isn't the word, but fitting them into a poem in terms of form or not form? How do you work those images? And maybe it's different per poem, but I wondered if there was a process you went through.
Yeah, wow. It's certainly poem specific. Right? You want to believe. I know what you want to believe. I can guess what you want to believe. I want to believe that the process is organic. Right? That's the euphemism we use to say that the form and the content somehow arrive together, and that one of them might precede the other in time, but really both in space and time, they're consonants, they're contemporaneous, they're right there together. I want to believe that. Sometimes the form makes the motion. Sometimes the content makes the motion. I'm not someone who will find in my own work form and then repeat it. I'm not going to be Marion Moore, right? I'm not going to count syllables in the first stanza and then duplicate that in the second stanza in terms of syllable count. I'm not going to do that. That's not of interest to me formally. But I'm banging some of those words together, and in my head, because of my training, I'm scanning everything. I'm going to hear the iambs to the third foot where the anapestic substitution hits, and then if that's something that I want to keep kicking, then I'm going to kick it. That training, the tuning myself to be the instrument, is really important to me. I don't actually know how to write with... I would not be able to write without being tuned to sound. For those of you who do that, I'm sorry, I know, it's just way obsessive, but welcome to the show.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm Mark.
Mark.
Oh,
And
no.
Biddy.
Sorry?
Biddy.
Giddy.
Giddy!
Yeah.
Damn, I almost had the dog's name.
I'll start off with an apology. It was
Giddy.
him that tried to jam his head into your groin.
Oh, I have dogs. It's okay.
All right.
And they're real.
But, yeah,
That was funny. Was that funny? Because you're like, wait a minute, what is he... Why wouldn't they be real? What is that? Go ahead.
I think. Well, one thing I was wondering, you had mentioned a couple thoughts on formal elements. One thing I noticed is a framing device sometimes. You open with a mystery novel where two women are floating in a boat and they're both dead. And you return to a boat, an empty boat at the end of the poem. There's a yellow robe that opens a poem, closes another poem. So one thing I was wondering is, do you set off with that in mind, or do you sort of operate out of a fugal type?
That's a nice call. Really what you're hearing is my heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my sense. It's Keats. Really what you're hearing is the imprint of the ode upon my psyche. So there I am in the garden. Sorry, this is my brother's not doing so well, and there's the bird, and there we kick out at the end of the poem, forlorn, forlorn. The very word is like a bell that brings me back from thee to my soul self. Adieu. So fled is that music. So the whole thing at the end of Nightingale, and that I wouldn't call it a framing device in his case. Ultimately, Hopkins talks about that turn inward as inscape. I think it's my romantic inheritance, and I think what you've caught is me thinking my way through Keats and the huge impact, especially in this book, that Keats has upon me. I was reading a lot of Keats. That's a good call. It's a good catch. More so than thinking about fugal ideas, although Totus Fuga is, like almost well nigh the best poem. Right? Ever. Right, like well nigh. I mean, I'm careful, but so it's not as though the fugue, this is Ceylon's great poem. So it's not as though the fugue is far from me in terms of where my architecture arises. But I think what you've caught is me reading Keats.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Again.
Hi, my name's Keith.
And I'm Alan. And welcome to Denver.
I was wondering if you have a specific time and or place where you go to specifically to write, or like what immediately
the process
precedes the writing process for you?
Yeah, I do. I have a study at home. I have an office on campus, and usually it's the study at home. My process is relentlessly diurnal by way of composition and nocturnal by way of revision. So I write in the morning and I revise later. I like to caffeinate heavily upon rising, and then I like to read. And this has been true my whole writing life. I read until I want to either steal what I've been reading, or it no longer makes me happy, or I start banging some words together that aren't in the text, that are my own. So really until I feel like I have to warm up my poetry brain. I got to get in that headspace. So I read. And I read also against my own predilections, especially pre-writing. So I'll read someone I don't like to piss myself off. But then I start coming back with how I wouldn't piss myself off, and I might be on the page as a result. Sometimes if I turn to Larry Levis to read him, and I adore him, I'm just sort of like this kind of puddle of not writing there's a Levis poem. But if I read someone whose new book I don't like, Stag's Leap, say, ooh, I named one. I don't really like that book. Sorry. I like a lot of her work, but I don't like that book as much. Then that might push me onto the page. Having said that, I actually think that was just an answer that was a little bit full of shit. But you should know that my answers might be that, of course, in any circumstance such as this, these are provisional answers. Like tomorrow, I might give you a different answer. At the moment, that one was true. I write with no. We were just talking about this. I write with no music. Actually, my desk faces a blank wall. The shades are drawn, the lights are on, and I'm trying to get in here as much as possible. One of the things that I've discovered is that I'm really suggestible when I first begin to compose. And so if there's construction going on across the street, there will be construction in my poems. And I'm like, wow, look, people building things. And then someone says, wasn't that like right? Yeah, oh, yeah. Like, oh, huh. So that the tree that's outside my window, I've had to close the blinds, and now they're like blinds in all my poems. We've done regression analyses. We know we're toast. We're toast. You can't run, right? You can close your eyes, but then typing's hard. So that's the morning process. I try to be on the page every day. I'm working on a new prose project. In prose, I have word count, 250 words a day, 7 days a week. I worked on the plane. I learned that my iPad, to work in Google Docs, needs to be online. And I was on a plane. So I had to write in notes. Have you seen notes? Oh my gosh, notes looks like that pad. Only it's got that font. As you can see, I'm like font sensitive. People need to be. So after the composition process, then it's 100 drafts over a period of years, and pretty close to being 100, I would say. Yeah. I do other things when I put a book together, but by way of the individual poems, that's the process. Most poems are too small to keep, so I throw back many, many, many poems. Hi.
Hi, I'm Ian.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. You were talking about prose as well earlier, and I was just wondering how exactly you go about the revision process after you're done drafting.
For prose?
Yes.
Okay, so after I've done my 250 and I'm on the page, and it's like 6 or 7 months, and it's basically a draft of a novel, then I work with poster board, and I outline what I've done, and I line my studio with flow charts and outlines, track the characters, track the plot, and then I use color coding. I'm really obsessive. Arrows to indicate motion. That's an old porn joke you don't want to know. So, and then I rejig the whole thing, and then I rewrite it. I tear down the poster board, and then I do the poster board again. So that'll be probably 4 times before a novel is ready to go out into the world. And I try to reconceive it anew with each draft, and that means a total new visual plan for me. My 3rd novel comes out in June. The first one took 10 years. Second one took 5. This one's taking 5.
So do you prefer to work in segments, or just go through the whole thing on each different poster board segmentation, if you will?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I'll tell you later. I'll think about that one.
Hey, I'm Coyle.
Hi.
Hi.
Alan. Nice to meet you.
Absolutely. With the way, I guess, younger readers are digesting information, specifically through the online social media, how do you feel like that affects like pioneers in the industry of writing, specifically poetry?
Well, the web is the world mind unedited, right? And to me, he was on Facebook 6 months ago. Right? So to me, this is a real big part of my life. What it means for my poems, I don't yet know. I tweet, but I haven't really done the tweeting, retweeted poem thing yet. I will read a poem tonight that's got Instagram in it, but it's in words saying Instagram. Which is like saying, I'm going to draw you a little picture of something that is different and cheat here and make myself look like I'm actually digital. But it's a word. I'm investigating with my students actively what the digital universe will mean for our art form. I think it's a really interesting problem, an interesting question. I followed hypertext when that was a cool thing. I'm following digital media now. I'm trying to track the bots and generating certain kinds of information and regenerating it in massive quantities. The trillion-line poem, which a colleague of mine has written, which is a bot, basically. And he's not a poet, which is also fascinating. So it's huge, and I don't know what to do with it, but I want to know. I'm a text-based person, but there are pictures in my novels, and increasingly there are pictures in my novels. The novel that I'm writing now, actually, I had to find. You can't find a single hole puncher anymore. You know that they're so obsolete that on a campus you can't find one. I had to order one because I wanted to put holes in the middle of one of the pages because there are all these bizarre. My goal is to write the wildest novel ever. That's my goal for this book. Why not? So there are holes in it. I'm thinking about media a lot. Now it's still going to be a page. Problem with a hole is that you can see the words on the next page. That sucks. I don't know what to do about that yet. Maybe a piece of black paper underneath, but then it's not a hole, but a piece of black paper. I'll shut up now. I'm off your topic. But I don't know. It's a good question. Hi.
Hi, I'm Jessica. So, in an interview with, I believe, Word Riot, you kind of talked about your hesitation with kind of writing with a biographical lens, and you kind of said something to the effect of you kind of like appropriating different speakers or characters. And so I was wondering if you could sort of just explain why that process really is necessary.
Absolutely. It's a great question. So in that same interview and in another one, and it was quoted also by Carl in the new interview, the most recent interview. So, the line that has tracked me a little is, my life is boring. You wouldn't want me to be an autobiographical writer. So, which is me being, there's the clever, right? Oh, well, I'm so clever. Look, it's so clever. I don't have a very thrilling life, and that includes campus politics. I am a student of, for me, the great speculative and imaginative writers of writers, period. So, for example, Calvino's my guy, and everything is made up. I mean, there's a little bit early on in the Fables when he's working through his communism, a little bit. But by the time he hits Oulipo, and they hit him, and then he's writing Cosmo. I mean, just there's all this stuff. He's so thoroughly invested or committed to the imagination, and I love that. So, to me, it's less that I'm not autobiographical. It's more that I'm invested in the imagination as the subject source for my work. Which isn't to say that I don't love a good confessional poem that'll blow the top of my head off. Wow, let's do it. It's not. I hope I'm Catholic enough in my taste that I'm not saying this is the only poem and it's mine. That would be, among other things, awful teaching. And I'd consider myself a teacher. The most autobiographical part of my work is the fact that it performs my sensibility. And so, in truth, I'm an autobiographical writer. Because this is closer to who I am as a kind of holistic, aesthetic experience for a reader than the story I would tell about riding my bike into a tree. That's a story. This is more autobiographical as a map of my existence than the details of my phenomenological experience. For me. For some people, the story has to be what they tell. There's a compulsion to tell. There's a need. And that need trumps the imagination. I have a dear, dear poet, a friend named Jacqueline Oshiro, teaches at Utah, and she says she never lies, as a person or in her poems. Some of that has to do with that she's writing her way through identity, Holocaust issues, family experience, but I can't fucking imagine that. I lie all the time. To me, it's like one reason I became a writer. Was to give half-assed answers that won't be true tomorrow. You're paying me to lie to you. Does that speak to it? Cool, you're welcome. You did already, so she's there.
Sure. Hi, Olivia.
Hi,
Nice to
Olivia.
meet you. Sort of dovetailing off what Jessica said. So, what do you think it says that in recent years there seems, well, I don't want to blame the beat poets, but since the beat poets, there seems to be sort of a trend towards more and more of this confessional style poetry, and also how safe is it to try to find the poet behind the poem, even in stuff that is supposedly autobiographical?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
Like Ted Hughes' birthday letters.
Mm-hmm. So the beats, Ginsberg. And Ginsberg's performance of self was a necessary correction to the art form. Ginsberg's legacy, as is often the legacy of the inimitable artist, is more confused and less successful than Ginsberg's accomplishment. So for me, Ginsberg is not a writer to whom I return. I have the good fortune to meet him a couple of times, and I have a signed poster from him outside my office door. Outside my office, on the lawn. Sorry, screwed up the image. I returned to 4 of his poems. So I returned to what? So Kaddish, America, Howl. Yeah.
Want to talk about Vortex Sutra?
Yeah. 4.
Supermarket.
So yeah. Yeah, so 5. But those, that's not. Those are great poems. I wish someone returned to one of my poems. So, dude's got 5. Cool. It's not a contest. Because then I lose if it's a contest. That's one issue. And how Ginsberg has validated counterculture experience that has led to opening up the art form, for me, is really important historically. I'm into that as an idea. The poems that have been beat imitations are less interesting to me over the long run because the political necessity isn't there. Other question: how do you find the poet? The Ted Hughes question behind the confessional assumes that there's a whole poet, that the self is not in flux, that the one guy with the one will wrote this, and that I'm on my literary detective work. I'm tracking. Oh wait, there he is. And to me, that's an assumption that dates to the moment when artists started signing the front of their paintings rather than the back. And I'm not as interested in that. That's not my historical lineage. My lineage is signing somebody else's name, crossing it out, signing my name, crossing it out, signing your name, crossing it out, signing my name. I want that relationship with my reader, where we become a conversation in flux as a result of performance of self. Sorry. I got all philosophical, logicus. I got all Wittgenstein on you. Sorry. It's painful. Some of that. Wittgenstein. I'm sorry, Wittgenstein on your ass. Sorry. I should really complete the whole. Got all Wittgenstein on your ass. Yeah.
I'm Pete.
Yes, hi Pete.
Yes.
We've met.
Go back to a couple of questions that were asked before the last one. How high do you think the fence is between what we call autobiographical writing and what we call imaginative writing?
So, here's another line that's followed me through interviews. There's no such thing as nonfiction. That's how high I think. I think there's just not one side. It's all made up, right? So, I am not a word, as it turns out. Words are metaphors, each one. I'm enough of a deconstructionist to believe that there's so much slippage between the sign and signifier that, a word is elegy to what it signifies. I'm there at the end of that Robert Haas poem. I just don't think anything's true. And as a result, maybe that's rationalizing for my aesthetic. It's possible. Maybe that's an excuse for the kinds of things I write. But, okay. Why not excuse the kinds of things you write? Someone should. But I don't. I have this kind of quarrel with the nonfiction writers campus where I teach. I'm like, that shit's made up. No, it happened. No, those are words. That didn't happen. Those are words. Words. So that...
Yeah.
And in a way that this also returns to you. I trust the imagination. I trust the symbolic language that we call writing. But I don't think that it's true in the way that requires rabbit ears. I guess that's a little funny. Or is that just... No, that's just one. I did this long disquisition on the nature of single quotation marks in their relationship to irony versus double quotation marks, air quotes, in their relationship to irony. You don't want to hear it. It's like an hour. Me talking like, oh, it's so bad. What? You don't want to know that.
Thank you for sparing us.
I did protest a little too much. Ian!
Yes. Hello again. I read one time, I believe it was Ray Bradbury who said that the difference between prose and poetry is that if prose was a football game, poetry is the 3-minute vignette they show on ESPN. What do you think about that?
It sounds like hogwash to me. Hogwash. I don't. First of all, that's putting them in the same, saying this is a reduced version of that sport, right? So that sounds to me like bullshit. Second of all, I think that there are fundamental differences between the medium. Although I'm unsure still about we say media when we talk about digital stuff. More than one medium is a media. No, our medium. But we say mediums when we talk about genre issues. Okay, fine, whatever. I'm still working on S apostrophe S. I don't know some of these things. Poems, the unit of measure in a poem, the units of meaning, words, sounds, lines, stanzas. Prose, words, phrases, clauses, sentences, paragraphs. So that's not like football with a frisbee. They're different. I like those differences. Now, I'm also working really hard to elide those differences in my own new work. I'm writing novels that are composed, that started as prose poems, that they then became flash fiction, and now there are 99 of them, and they're being collected, and it's called a novel. So I'm interested in blurring those lines, but there are lines, and the lines are between sports, not one highlight film from another sport. Hi.
Coyle again.
Dan, hi.
How hard is it to? You see, you please yourself first.
Hey.
Like it, well, I'll be honest here. See, you're right to please yourself. How hard is the disconnect between the publisher and the audience or the reader?
I'm not actually sure what you're asking.
Well, like, because I know, do you have to write to cater to like a publisher's wants or needs? Or?
No. I live in a really small corner of literary America where the publishers like what I do because it generates them 3 readers. And experimentation is actually welcome, and it's just because there are no checks with zeros, I can play. I'm not at risk, and I survive by teaching. I pay my bills by teaching, and so for me, the collapse of commercial literary publishing, how poetry moved out of New York years ago, followed now by literary fiction, which is I think has moved out of New York. Literary fiction is the new poetry, says my friend Jill. It's like, oh, that sucks. So this drift, how we've become defederalized as an industry, I think is liberating. I think it's actually led to more experimentation in my own work. For me, I've experimented more because there's no, that's going to be a mini-series, that book of poems. It's not. It's not going to be a film. So I'm getting weirder and wilder as I get older. Taller. Tall. Hey. She's like, no, you're not tall. Hi.
Hi. I was wondering, what's your greatest enemy when you write, and how do you combat it?
I talked a little bit earlier about cleverness, and it's how it is my bane. And I think a bane would be like top 3 greatest enemies. You probably have a couple of banes, but I don't know what would that be? A gaggle, a murder of banes? What's the composite for it? I don't know what that would be, like a hamster of banes. What is that? I don't know what you call it. Hamster's silly. See, that's my bane. Greatest enemy? My day job. Cool. Hi.
Hi, I'm Skylar. I was wondering who some of your favorite philosophers were and how their work has aided the creation of your own.
Well, certainly the ones I've rattled off quite happily. So Wittgenstein and the Tractatus is really important to me. The word games. Kierkegaard's really there. And then actually in my new work, in this new manuscript, I've been reading a lot of Martin Buber. And the I and thou stuff, the relationship between self and universe, and the way that language bridges and doesn't bridge that relationship has been really fascinating to me. Buber's 20th century Jewish apologist who is thinking his way through also not just Judaism, but really good, from Erasmus, really good ideas about selfhood, and not as fragmented as perhaps some of the continental philosophers of his time. So, at the moment, it's Buber. Nerdville. I and Thou. Oh my gosh. Got to read that book. I and Thou. Awesome.
Do you understand the entire Tractatus?
No, but luckily it comes luckily it's really bite-sized, right? So it comes in these rules for us, and luckily it comes in so it generates study in a way that's very to me that's fruitful, as opposed to I'm no philosopher. I just read it for shits and giggles. It's like, and I swear. By the way. When I get excited, especially, you can see. But it's my students track how happy I am by how early in a class I swear. Like, that was like a 4-minute swear partner. Like, no. But, I minored in it. And now I'm minoring in it still. That's how I do it. But I think that you should read everything. Because that's the job. So I try to read everything.
You said that you're no philosopher. Yeah, it sounds good. You said that you're no philosopher. Do you really believe that there's a difference between poetry, a poet, and a philosopher?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is an expressive art form in which I'm trying to mean thrice, as I said. Right? So this is a artistic medium that has aesthetic ambitions, that relates to a tradition of orality that comes to us bardically. There's a significant difference. Are there ideas in poetry? God, I hope so. All emphasis on the deity met. Is there poetry in philosophy? Not as often for me. Another reason I might choose a philosopher, Kierkegaard said. I will read Kierkegaard because, oh my gosh, there is some poetry there. And because he understands artists, which really matters to me. Like, he's one of the few who kind of processes what I need to do to be a man. He's there. There's some slight political hiccups reading Kierkegaard. Whatever. Yeah, there are.
Can I ask you, in terms of like poems I return to after love is one that I'm just really curious about the poem. Well, one in terms of the autobiographical, did you really drive past Toronto while having an argument on the way to Toronto?
Yes.
Okay. You're near my boyhood home, so I'm just curious.
Where's that?
Grimsby.
Grimsby.
Right near Hamilton. Yeah.
My mother-in-law's in Hanover. So we've Goderich, we lived there through the summers. Kincardine. A part of the world I know well. But yeah, did my partner and I, we went right past the whole city. We were so deep in that argument, and it's a famous argument, and she was wrong. And that's in the poem. Because you were wrong. So that autobiographical nugget was not the poem, but something added to the poem in a pretty far along in the revision process. That poem is predicated upon the exploration of love as an idea of metaphor.
Great. That was my question. Was you seem to utilize this sort of like a mini litany of metaphors in like 2s and 3s.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was I don't know how that's
Hegel, more philosophy. So, but I'm really thinking about in that poem the content subject stuff. There, I'm thinking about how metaphor itself is an act of love, and vice versa. So, what that might constitute in a life, but also what it might constitute linguistically. It's one of the few poems my partner didn't see after its writing, and has a special meaning to me. So,
spending time with the dog.
Made her, no, she just cried. So it was a good thing. It's a good thing. It's hard to make someone you love cry because of love. It was a good moment. I liked it. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, Brett.
Brett! Hi, Brett.
You mentioned earlier about trying to blur the lines between poetry and fiction in your newest novel.
Mm.
What would you say whenever you're trying to write them separately, what's the easier one to do?
Poems, they're really shorter. I'm not, true. Poems are easier. They're shorter. They also take 5 years. But it's 5 years at a short thing, But it's not that, There's so much more room for blunder in prose for me. There's no room for blunder. As in, I can get away with shit in a novel. Whaleman's 102, 389 on the word count. 102,389 words. So the new novel is really short, but still 102,389. How many of those words could be wrong and I can get away with it? Because I'm not Joyce. And I know I'm not Joyce.
So do you enjoy it more too?
I don't know. It all makes me sob. I mean, just really, like, a book arrives in the mail, and I'm like, I wrote that. And that never changes. I'm a bunch of books in, and it never, most people know this story. So when this book came out, this is Elephants and Butterflies, this book came out, and so when a book arrives, I tend to do this and walk around, and I'm really puddle, I cry. So this book came by FedEx, and like 7:30 in the morning, I had a really long day, and I couldn't go around crying and clutching my book. I had to go to work. So I put it here, there, in my pants, underneath my shirt, and I wore it all day. And I didn't tell anybody. People were like, well, you seem a little upset. I'm like, that thrill ruined the first copy of this book, because it was like, that has never changed. And it's one reason why, for me, book culture, I have 6,000 books at home. It never changes. Some of them I wrote. That's so cool. And what a privilege to be participating in history. So
your love of books is pervasive. Do you feel the same thrill and satisfaction publishing online as you do in books?
I feel more fear publishing online than I do publishing books. In part because the readership can be so large and permanent. I think you can. So early in my graduate career, one of my mentors was a fabulous, awful man who happened to win the Nobel Prize eventually. The shit. And wonderful, brilliant man. And I just wanted to write down everything he said near me. Rarely at me, which was fine. And his name is Joseph Brodsky. So Brodsky's a great Russian poet, wonderful poet. And he said to me, never embarrass yourself. I'm like, that's too late. It's like, what? Come on. And this was in response to my handing him, without his having read them, a journal in which my poems were appearing. And I was just beginning to publish. And what he meant was, don't publish too early. Don't be on record for having, whatever. The internet is always there, and it will always be there. And so it scares me, in a way, because I can't revise anything. I can revise into here, but I can't revise. It scares me. So I have trepidations.
The sites disappear, though. They go away. So if your work's on the site, it goes away.
Sort of.
There's a library now where they actually archive stuff.
Yeah, there's cache.
That weakens my argument, so I don't agree.
The other thing about the internet is that it is. To me, it's like the great expectations of our times, unedited. It's a serialized Dickens novel that's mapping sociologically who we are, only it's never been revised.
That's a wonderful thought.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you. And the lack of revision, for me as a person who's relatively analytic when it comes to that process, inspires trepidation. My participating in that inspires trepidation. Hi.
Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
I just have a question that I tend to try to ask any writer when I read this. Have you ever, because you're saying you try to write at least 250 words a day, and you ever get a point where you just can't?
No.
That nothing comes out, you get a writer's block or anything like that?
No. No. I can always write crap. Well, and usually do. So no. I can always sit there and type and then throw it out the next day. But no. This is my job. Granted, I've had some practice doing it, but no. I can put a sentence at the end of the page and aim for 250, which I do at times. Like, oh, that sentence, that's a good first sentence. Let's put it down there. And then let's write the other 243. And you know, as I said earlier, most of it's too small to keep anyway. So that doesn't... no.
Do you ever feel guilty throwing any of it away?
God, no. I feel guilty publishing it.
All right, I think that's it. Our time is up. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you both.